Welcome. This is Pastor Jim on location at Lakeshore Assembly of God parking lot over by the pavilion. As you can see, we are changing the date of our Pastor Jim on location teachings, and we're going to be changing it from Friday at noon to Wednesday at 1. Friday's supposed to be my day off, and it's not working doing it on Friday, so we're going to try to do it at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. We have a Bible study here from 11 to 12:30, so 1 o'clock works really good. And as you can see, we have a beautiful T-Bird here again. And what's your name, sir?
Bob Hank,
Bob Hank. Where do you live, Bob?
in Mentor.
In Mentor. And you were here a few weeks ago with your T-Bird. We thought we'd come on over here a little bit. We thought we'd give them the rear view of our cars today, okay? And tell us a little bit about the bird again.
I bought it in 2013. It's an original Northern Ohio car. It was sold in Akron, and I'm only the third owner. It's got a 312 cubic inch engine, all the power that they had back then, power steering, power brakes, and all that. And it was a luxury sports car.
Now, the top you had painted. Isn't that true? This is not a factory color.
It is not a factory color. I had that painted. The car was originally all black. When I got it, it was all white. And and then I liked the red, and then I put the red top on it.
Okay, well, Bob, thanks for bringing it out again today. And everybody, I know they really enjoy seeing your car, they've told me. And I want to remind everybody, share. And I also have to turn up the volume on my phone. It's not up at all. Yeah, that's better. The volume's turned up. I hope it's going to work. Okay, well, we're glad you're all here today. Share. I'm going to throw this. I'll put it in your car for now, Bob. Okay. Well, we got a lot of wind again, and we'll see what happens. We got the hammer trying to hold everything down here. Well, today we're going to talk about 3 times a charm. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're going to be talking about Peter. Our text today is going to be John, and that's 21:15 through 19. We got an interesting teaching, I think. First of all, we know what happened the night that Christ was crucified, or the night that he was rather betrayed, and they had the secret trial for him. We know that Peter, sadly, denied the Lord 3 times. But I think in all fairness to Peter, we have to look at it and say to ourselves, okay, he denied the Lord 3 times, but what did he do a few hours before he denied the Lord 3 times? Remember when they came to take Jesus away in the garden? Jesus was in the garden praying, and remember he told the disciples, he said, will you pray with me for an hour? And he brought Peter, James, and John and brought them aside, and remember 3 times he came back, he kept catching them sleeping. And we need to understand, this was the middle of the night. This wasn't 7, 8 o'clock at night. They'd had a long day. They already had the Lord's Supper. They had a long teaching that Christ gave them during the teaching. Then they went out into the garden to pray. And we understand that they fell asleep. And remember, Jesus came back the 3rd time, found them asleep, and said, sleep on. And Christ, he knew these guys are not going to be able to stay awake and pray with me. However, when the guards came to take Jesus away in the garden, do you remember what happened? It was Peter who drew a sword, and he, if you remember, he swung at one of the guards named Malchus, and he cut off his ear. And Jesus took the ear, picked it up, the piece of ear, and put it back on his head and healed the guard. And that's when Jesus said, those who live by the sword die by the sword. And we need to understand, and I've preached on this many times, Peter wanted to be a martyr. He wanted to be a martyr that night. He wanted to prove to Jesus, who had asked previously, he asked him, would you die for me? And of course he said, if no one else will die for you, I will. And we need to understand the easiest thing in the world for Peter would be to die that night, to die a martyr. So he proves that his word was good. Not understanding that Jesus was going to be crucified, that Christ was going to rise again, and that Peter then the rest of his life would have to, quote, serve the Lord instead of just die for the Lord. In other words, there are times I believe it is easier to die for a cause than it is to live for it. And Peter wanted to die for Jesus. And he gave it his best shot. And in all fairness, when he took that sword out, chopped Malchus's ear off, at that split second, that Malchus and the other guards could have taken swords and they could have instantly killed Peter, and there would have been no questions asked. But obviously, that's not what happened. Peter lives through it. Now, hours later, he's by the fire, and he's all confused because why did they take Jesus away? If Jesus can raise people from the dead, why is Jesus letting these guards and the Romans do what they're doing? If God is sovereign over all these things, why is all this happening? So we're going to go to verse 15 of 21, because we're going to pick it up here that after the teaching we did last week about when they went fishing, Jesus makes a little fish barbecue on the beach. And when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And he answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Now the name of the message today is three times a charm. Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Then again Jesus said, okay, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody asks you a question, you answer it. If they ask over and over again, you're like, what are you after? What don't you believe that I just told you? And we need to understand that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And here is if you want to say reinstatement, this is exactly what Jesus is doing with Peter. Peter is being reinstated. In other words, it's kind of like if we do something wrong over and over, we wish that we could do something right the same number of times, in a way, I guess, to atone for what we've been through, okay, what we did. And in a way, that's exactly what Jesus, I believe, is doing with Peter. He's giving him a chance over and over again to confess his love for Christ. A short time ago, he denied Jesus 3 times. Now he is able to tell Christ that he loves him. Now the 3rd time comes up, and this gets interesting. Okay? The 3rd time Jesus said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt or offended because Jesus asked him the 3rd time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Now, if you study the Greek, the language with which the New Testament was written, if you study the Greek, the first 2 times that Peter said, "I love you," it is the Greek word phileo, which comes from brotherly love. The city of Philadelphia actually is after the Greek word phileo. Okay? But the 3rd time that Peter answers, the Greek makes it clear that is agape. And agape is it is the purest form of love. So the first time he answers, I believe he answers almost, I don't know, instinctively. You know, like somebody says, "Hey, how many times with our friends and, anybody, we can say, 'Hey, I love you,' and we say it, we mean it a little bit, but it doesn't cost anything to tell somebody you love them. So you could say you love somebody. But deep down, that might be a filial love. It's like, it's like it's a love that we have with each other. It's a love that we have with other people. I'm an American, so I love other Americans, okay? Do I love all Americans individually, sacrificially? No. But if somebody says, "Do you love people that are Americans?" I say, "Yes, I do." Okay. So in a way, that's a filial love. A filio is simply It's something connected to the idea of a member of an association. It's a group of people, and we say, I love you all. It's like an actor receiving an Emmy and says, oh, I love all of you. Do you know what I mean? And all the people that saw my movie. Well, does he really love those people? Really love them? Well, maybe not, but you get my drift. So the third time Jesus says, do you love me? And he's hurt because he thinks that Jesus doesn't believe him. And the third time he says, you know all things, you know that I love you. And the Greek makes it clear that that is agape love. And in so doing, Peter then, 3 times in a row, is able to tell the Lord he loves him, even though shortly before, 3 times, he denied him. And that's what God does many times in our life. If we mess up somewhere, I remember Pastor Jack Irvin, a precious brother in Christ, a friend of mine. I've known him for 40-something years in the Lord. And I remember Jack many years ago. We were talking about the ministry and things in life. And he basically said, if you flunk the test, you have to take it over. And Peter flunked the test that day when he denied the Lord. But the Lord allowed him, in essence, to take the test over. Now, remember at the beginning I said that Peter wanted to be a martyr? And isn't it kind of true that if we can just die in the middle of doing something honorable, and there's people that have to die in the middle of honor, but understand what I'm saying. Peter, if he died in the garden that night, if they killed him, then when he told Jesus earlier, if everybody else denies you, I won't, then his word would have been perfect. It would have been true. But the thing was, as I said, for many of us, it is not that God calls us to die. He calls us to die to self, but he doesn't call us to physically die. There are people that are called to die. There's people that are martyrs all over the world. We have police officers. We have people in the military. And I'll be honest with you. They are in a situation that they can, quote, lose their physical life simply because they are doing what they have been called to do. But understand that while there are some that have to die physically, the rest of us have to live. Peter wanted to die. He wanted to die to prove to Jesus that his word was true. And I hate to tell you, but the night that he denied the Lord 3 times, the Lord allowed that on purpose so that Peter could see that his word is not the last word. That his strength, no matter how good and strong he was, he needed more than simply his own. And Peter then was called and would be called to serve many more years the Lord. In other words, he was given a life sentence. He was given a life sentence. And what's interesting about verse 18 and 19, listen what it says. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go. And verse 19 caps it up. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And it is believed that when Peter died for the Lord, a martyr, it's believed that he literally was nailed to the cross upside down, that he said, I am not even worthy to die the way that Christ died for me. And they did take him. And they bound him, and they took him a place, in essence, that you don't want to go. He didn't want to die on a cross just simply because he had faith in Christ. But he was willing, instead of recanting his faith, instead of turning away and denying Christ, to his death then, he confessed him. And in essence, what is Jesus doing? Well, he's giving Peter something that's very unique in history. He's actually telling Peter, you're going to die for me. So Peter wanted to die for the Lord, but it was under his terms. And Jesus, in essence, was saying, Peter, someday you will die for me, but it won't be under your terms. It will be, in essence, under God's. And isn't that the way that it should be? That God should get all the glory. Well, I hope there was never any question in either of them. There was never any question in Peter's mind that I live in us. Lord, help us to understand what a beautiful thing it is that while we die to self, as you call us to, you also call us to a life sentence of serving you.